As winter loosened its grip and the light slowly returned to the northern lands, life began to shift outward once more. Snow softened, ice cracked along riverbanks, and the air carried a faint sense of movement. This was not a sudden awakening, but a gradual one. Nothing in the Viking world changed quickly. Even spring arrived carefully, testing the land before fully revealing itself. Daily life followed the same quiet discipline that governed the seasons. Each task had its time, and each person had a role shaped by age, skill, and experience. Mornings began without urgency. There were no alarms, only light and habit. People rose when it was time to rise. Guided by the needs of the day rather than strict schedules, work was steady and practical. Tools were simple but well cared for. A broken handle or dull blade could mean wasted effort or injury. Repair was valued as much as creation. Nothing useful was discarded without thought. This careful approach extended to food, clothing, and shelter. Women played a central role in the household. They managed food supplies, oversaw daily routines, and maintained the rhythm of the home. Their knowledge of preservation, preparation, and organization was essential for survival. Strength in the Viking world was not limited to battle or travel. It was found in consistency and responsibility. Children were included in daily life from an early age. They learned through observation rather than instruction. Simple tasks gradually became more complex as they grew. There was little separation between learning and living. Knowledge was not abstract. It was practical and immediately useful. Elders held a respected position. Their experience carried weight, not because of authority, but because it represented survival. Having lived through many winters was proof of wisdom. Advice was offered quietly, without insistence. Those who listened benefited. Those who did not learned through consequence. Beyond the longhouse, fields were tended carefully. Farming in the north was uncertain. Soil was thin, and growing seasons were short. Crops had to be chosen wisely, and timing mattered greatly. A late frost or heavy rain could undo months of effort. This uncertainty reinforced humility and patience. Animals were an important part of daily life. Livestock provided food, materials, and companionship. Caring for animals required attentiveness. Their health reflected the care they received. Loss was taken seriously, as it affected the entire household. As summer approached, attention turned toward the sea. Ships were inspected, repaired, and prepared. Voyages were not undertaken lightly. Whether for trade, exploration, or necessity, travel carried risk. Crews were chosen carefully, often among those with proven calm and reliability. Life at sea demanded trust. Each person depended on the others for survival. Cooperation was not optional. Arguments were settled quickly or set aside. The sea did not allow distraction. Wind and waves required full attention. Journeys could last days or weeks. During this time, the world narrowed to wood, water, and sky. The steady motion of the ship encouraged reflection. Many hours passed in silence, broken only by practical communication. This quiet fostered a deep awareness of surroundings and self. Navigation relied on experience and memory. Coastlines were remembered by shape and sound. The behavior of birds, the color of water, and the movement of clouds offered guidance. These skills were passed down gradually, refined through repetition. Belief in unseen forces shaped how the Vikings understood their world. Nature was alive with meaning. Storms, dreams, and chance encounters were interpreted carefully. The gods were not distant rulers, but presences woven into daily existence. Odin represented wisdom gained through sacrifice. Thor embodied protection and strength. Frey and Freya were connected to fertility, growth, and balance. These figures were not worshipped through grand temples, but acknowledged through small rituals and respect for the forces they represented. Fate was understood as something shaped, but not fully controlled. Choices mattered, but outcomes were never guaranteed. This belief encouraged responsibility without arrogance. Success was appreciated. Failure was accepted. Death was approached with the same calm realism that governed life. Mourning was shared and unhurried. The dead were remembered through stories and names passed forward. Memory was a form of continuation. As generations passed, the Viking world slowly changed. New beliefs entered. Trade connected distant cultures. Old traditions adapted or faded quietly. There was no sudden end to the Viking Age. It dissolved gradually, like snow melting into earth. The rhythm remained, even as forms changed. People continued to work, wait, travel, and rest. The land endured. The sea remained. Time moved forward without haste. Now, as this story draws towards stillness, allow your thoughts to settle. Imagine the final glow of firelight, the calm surface of water at dusk, the soft return of silence. The Viking world does not end loudly. It fades gently, leaving behind echoes of patience, endurance, and quiet strength. And in that quiet, rest comes naturally. Before numbers were carved into stone, before time was divided into strict measures, the northern world existed in a state of waiting. The land itself seemed patient, shaped not by sudden change, but by centuries of wind, ice, and water moving slowly across its surface. This was the environment in which the early Vikings learned to live, not by conquering time, but by surrendering to its pace. The northern regions of Scandinavia were defined by long coastlines, deep fjords, and forests that stretched far beyond the edge of sight. Mountains rose sharply from the sea, their faces marked by ancient glaciers. In winter, snow softened every shape, blurring the lines between earth and sky. In summer, light lingered well into the night, casting a pale glow that never fully faded. Life here required attentiveness. The land offered resources, but only to those who observed its rhythms closely. The changing position of the sun, the feel of the wind, and the behavior of animals all carried meaning. These signs told people when to plant, when to harvest, and when to prepare for the long darkness ahead. Time was not experienced as a constant forward motion. Instead, it felt circular. Each year returned to familiar points: the first frost, the deep freeze, the slow thaw, and the brief warmth. This repetition shaped memory and expectation. The future was understood through the past, and preparation was based on what had already been endured. During winter, the world grew quiet. Snow covered the land, absorbing sound and movement. Rivers froze, and travel became dangerous. The sea, often restless, turned dark and unpredictable. In response, life contracted inward. Families gathered in longhouses, where warmth and light were carefully maintained. The longhouse was more than a shelter. It was a shared space where patience was practiced daily. Fires were tended slowly, never allowed to burn too high or too low. Food was rationed with care, measured not in abundance, but in endurance. Ejection carried awareness of the months still to come. Inside these walls, people learned to sit with time rather than escape it. There was no artificial light to push the day forward. When darkness arrived, work slowed naturally. Conversation softened. Silence was welcomed rather than avoided. In this quiet, thoughts stretched and settled. Children learned early that waiting was not punishment, but necessity. Waiting for daylight. Waiting for storms to pass. Waiting for spring to return. These lessons were not spoken often, but absorbed through daily life. Watching adults move calmly through hardship taught resilience more effectively than instruction. The environment shaped emotion as much as behavior. Sudden displays of excitement or despair were rare. Emotional steadiness was valued, not because feelings were absent, but because control ensured survival. Fear, when it appeared, was addressed through preparation rather than panic. The land itself reinforced this approach. Trees did not grow quickly. Crops did not appear overnight. Even the sea required patience, offering safe passage only when conditions allowed. Rushing led to loss. Waiting led to survival. At night, the sky became a vast presence. Without artificial light, stars filled the darkness, their patterns familiar and steady. The movement of these stars provided reassurance that order existed beyond human concerns. The sky reminded people that their struggles were part of a much larger system. Sleep came naturally in this environment. Without constant stimulation, the body followed the rhythms of light and darkness. Rest was deep and necessary. Dreams were seen as meaningful, reflections of inner thought or glimpses into unseen forces. Morning often began with quiet reflection on what had been dreamed. The sea remained a constant presence, even during times of stillness. Its sound carried across distance, a reminder of both connection and danger. The Vikings understood that the sea could not be commanded. It had to be respected, observed, and waited upon. This relationship with nature fostered humility. Human effort mattered, but it was never absolute. Success depended on alignment with forces beyond control. This understanding reduced arrogance and encouraged careful decision-making. Over time, this patience became cultural. Stories were told slowly, with pauses that allowed meaning to deepen. Elders spoke without urgency, trusting listeners to absorb what was said. Knowledge was passed through repetition and experience, not haste. As seasons passed and generations changed, this quiet endurance remained constant. The tools improved, ships grew stronger, and journeys reached farther shores, but the internal rhythm of life remained tied to the land. To live in the North was to accept limits. Limits of light, warmth, and certainty. Yet within these limits, people found stability. The predictability of cycles offered comfort, even when individual moments were difficult. Now, as you listen to this story, allow that same patience to settle in you. There is no destination to reach quickly. The narrative unfolds as the northern world once did, slowly, steadily, and without demand. This is the beginning of a long journey through time, shaped by silence, endurance, and waiting. And like the people of the North, you are invited to rest within it.